All right. Hello, class. My name is Justin Berger, and these are my responses to module number 2. So, for part 1, the required questions. First question of grading is seldom easy or pleasant, and how will you work grades and the grading process into your future classroom? So, I thought that everybody knows that in the classroom, grading is neither easy nor pleasant as a teacher, and it it is a pain, but it is quite necessary. As we read in some other books in Sizer, even though that's for SEC 200, they all relate together. How the the um the teacher didn't want to give all the assignments. He didn't want to give the long multiple page papers because he didn't have time to grade it all, and that can be a problem in today's teaching environment where there might be too many students for each teacher. But I do think in the future, in my future classroom, I would incorporate grades in the classroom by simply having the grading scale that the entire state follows. And I'll just leave it at that. I mean, in my high school, the grading, well, when I was in high school, just a few years ago, like at least most of us, the grading scale was 7 point system, and now it's 10 point system. My younger brother's in high school, and now he gets a 91 in a class and he gets an A minus, whereas for me that was a B plus. So that obviously affects our GPA, and it makes a huge difference. Obviously, colleges are going to look at that now differently too, and they'll see it, but it's still interesting. So, the second question: how will you keep students informed of their progress during the grading term? I think it's important for students to know their grades throughout the semester, the quarter, and they should always just be on top of it. And as a teacher, it's your responsibility somewhat to get them to know everything and for them to be comfortable. I remember, so I mean, I know most of us want to be either high school teachers, at least I assume. I just remember being in middle school. They would have interim report cards that would be sent out every 3 weeks in the quarter. They'd be sent out twice every quarter, where it was week 3 and week 6, and then after week 9, that would be a quarter in a middle school, and you would get your report cards every quarter. And so you would track your progress, and you would see that you were doing well in this quarter, or that you were doing well for this part of the quarter, and you saw that your test average was good, and your homework average, and your quizzes, and etc. You could see where you needed help in, what sections you needed to do better in. And I always thought it was very helpful as a student because that way you knew where you were headed. Um, Another interesting thing was, so especially in middle school, parents are still obviously very involved, and teachers know that, and teachers want to keep the parents involved, and they want the parents to know if their students are doing well or are not doing well. So depending on how you want to do that, but some teachers in my middle school would even make, they would give you the interim report card, and then they would send you home, and they would make an assignment for to bring it back with a parent's signature. That way the parent knew that where their child was, their progress, they knew their grade in the class. And if they were, let's say the parent were upset, then the parent might want to contact the teacher and set up a meeting to see what was wrong, to ask if there was something that the child needed help with, or one thing or another. So that was an interesting way, because that way parents know, and the students are informed of the grading process during the term, as well as the parents. So I think that's important. Um, that's question 2. So for question 3, how will achievement be monitored and recorded? Um, in the future classroom, at least for me, I think it'll be monitored closely, but not too close. Achievement, at least. I think it's important for students to recognize that their achievement, but at the same time, it's not maybe the best idea to for the entire class to know of a student's achievement. Where if you praise a child in front of the entire class, while that student who's getting praised will obviously feel happy and might put some other kids down because they might be like, oh, well, I'm not doing as well as that kid, and then they'll get upset about it. So I think you should maybe keep it closer to the chest. Obviously, for like how achievements monitored in the grade book, you can tell where what students get on all their assignments, and now even if it's on the computer, but you can just see, you can track their progress or decline on that their scores, whether it's tests, homework, other other assignments. So that's a it's an interesting question actually, but I think that's how I would like monitor achievement in the classroom during the grading period. So how will effort and knowledge be weighed in the grading? In my opinion, I think every teacher's grading technique should be determined solely on whatever grade is made on the assignment. I understand that effort and knowledge are important, and I definitely agree that every student should try 100%, even 100%, 110%, sorry, on every assignment that they try to do. Um, if you put in the effort, you will usually get the grade you deserve, and you'll feel better about yourself. At least in my experience. I understand that there are some students who study for hours on a test maybe and will only make B's, and then there are the other students who will study for 30 minutes and make the A's. So sometimes it's just not fair for everybody, but like I said, as they try hard enough and they will get what they deserve. I don't think that if you know that a kid does what, if a kid works really hard, I would feel proud of the kid, but at the same time, I don't think it merits special treatment and like extra. Like if you think, oh well, he worked really hard, so I'm gonna give him another point instead of, because I just think that's unfair. It's also unfair where if you have a student who does really well, but you know the student, you're like, oh, you know what? I know he doesn't work that hard. He kind of slacks off, but he does all his work and he gets good grades. That's not a reason to penalize him because he doesn't work as hard. I don't think that's fair either. And then also, so for how does good or bad behavior affect grading? It's somewhat to the same extent exactly how I felt about the fourth question. I think every teacher's technique should be grading technique should be determined solely on the grade made on the assignment, and that there shouldn't be any bias between or from the teacher to the student. I don't think that if the child is even if the child is disruptive and misbehaving and he's not a good student, that doesn't mean that he should be penalized in the grading department. There's other ways to handle that. He can get phone calls home, or he can get in sent to principal's offices, or etc. But I think it's unfair to take it out on the child's grades if he does okay, but you think that he doesn't deserve it. That's really not fair. I also think it's immoral almost to judge a student based on how he acts and not what he does for his homework and assignments and grades. Um, I just think it's unfair, like I said, if they're misbehaving, and if they're a good student, that doesn't mean that they get extra points and they get extra attention for like grading and homework. I just think that's unfair. For part two, the question that I decided to answer was question three. What is the main purpose of academic standards and learning objectives? And in my opinion, I thought that the main purpose of academic standards and the learning objectives is to have a set of goals which you as a teacher and your whole class can aim to reach. That's what I always thought they were. They're important because they're a baseline for the class and students. To me, learning objectives usually mean that the learning objective will be the lesson plan of the day, maybe the week, and the goal of the learning objective is to understand what you guys learned in the classroom. An example that I could use for this would be, so because I want to be a social studies teacher, and I'm even a history major, so we'll stick with the history topic. But let's say you're learning about Europe in the middle of the 20th century, in the first quarter of the 20th century after World War One, and you're analyzing the Treaty of Versailles. And now some historians debate whether or not the Treaty of Versailles was such a poor treaty, and it was just very unfair, even It was very unfair, and it was just very hard, and unrealistic expectations were put on several nations, including Germany. And it ultimately, some historians argue, ultimately led to World War II breaking out in Europe. So that could be a learning objective. You could learn about the causes of World War II, and the Treaty of Versailles could be one of them. And if the class understands that and realizes that, then I would consider the learning objective being reached for the day. And that's like a goal that like you can accomplish as a teacher, as a student, and as a whole class. And I think if the entire class does it, then that's like a good thing. That's why I think they're there, and like that's the main purpose for them. Academic standards, it's sort of the same thing. That way, the student knows what he or she needs to do to earn which grade. However, they can do that, whether they have to study very hard to earn a certain grade, or if they don't have to do a lot of work at all. Some they think they need to read all the chapters or not, if it's required or not, whatever to do. But that's my opinion on most of these questions, and that'll wrap it up for this module. Thank you.